This is Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby, and you're listening to the Love, Happiness, and Success podcast.
Well, hello, sunshine, shining on the sand. I've got to go now, hold my hand, laying down on the sand.
I love that song. That is Damien Jurado and Richard Swift doing a cover of the song Hello Sunshine. It is from their album entitled Other People's Songs. The whole album is fantastic. I'm linking to it in case you want to check it out on iTunes or wherever you get your music these days. I thought this song would be a perfect introduction to set the mood for today's topic, because today we are going to be talking about relaxation, and not just garden variety relaxation. Oh no, we are going to be talking about advanced relaxation skills. And here's why. There is a certain kind of personality that I am deeply envious of. These people, they can go on vacation, they can let it all go. This podcast episode, if you are one of these people, this podcast episode is not for you. No, this podcast episode is for the rest of us who are type A stress cases, who are always working, always doing something, always thinking about something, don't really even like relaxing that much, like feel kind of uncomfortable when they're put in situations where they don't have anything to do. This podcast is for you, because today we're going to be talking about how to not even just relax, but like how to not become profoundly burned out if you are a type A stress case, because this is an occupational hazard that comes along with our disposition. So if you are among the naturally sanguine and relaxed, you can not listen to this, but you go ahead and forward this to the person that my description just made you think about and feel a little sorry for, because that's what we're doing today on the show. If this is your first time listening to the show, welcome. I hope my introduction didn't scare you away. I am Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby. I'm the founder and clinical director of Growing Self-Counseling and Coaching, where we are all about helping you create love, happiness, and success. So we do marriage counseling, we do therapy, life coaching, career coaching. And that is what this podcast is also all about, is supporting you on your journey of personal growth and positive change. And every week I select a topic, either something that we're seeing a lot of happening in our practice. It's coming up in conversations with clients, or we're getting a lot of interest in this particular service that people are looking for help with. Or I also take tons of questions from my wonderful listeners and readers of our blog. And so if you have a question that you would like for me to address on an upcoming episode, or potentially write about on our blog at growingself.com, I do hope you get in touch. Best ways of tracking me down are on Facebook /Dr. Lisa Bobby. You can now get in touch with me on Instagram at Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby. I think I'm up to about, well, I don't know. I think it's more than the 19 followers or something that I had a couple of weeks ago. I'm very new to the world of Instagram, but I'm enjoying it so far. So you can get in touch with me on Instagram. I will get right back to you. You can also, of course, email us through our website, growingself.com. And while you're on growingself.com, you can click through all kinds of past episodes of the podcast, certainly, but also you can can check out all of the articles and advice we have there for you, written by myself or other members of our team who are just so brilliant. And we have all kinds of other resources. We have videos, we have free quizzes, all kinds of good stuff. So growingself.com to take advantage of all of that or get in touch. All right, so let's talk about our topic today. Let's talk about advanced relaxation skills for people who are always on the go. Oh, so much to talk about here. Where to begin? And so big shout out too to those of you who requested this as a topic. You know, I re-released a podcast about how to have a truly restorative vacation last week. And I had a number of people get in touch with like, we need more of that. So I had some requests for self-care, but also, you know, people talking about the very real struggle that they have when they are going and doing things that should be relaxing, like they're trying, but it feels like they are still stressed from the inside out. And so that's why I wanted to kind of stay here for another week is to give you more. And also, trust me, I am not going to be giving you a bunch of platitudes or like information that you already know that you can Google and find 85, tips for relaxation. Take a bath. We're not doing that. And the reason why is because circumstances and air quote relaxing behaviors do not cut it when you have a predisposition towards being a high energy type overachieving person. And because you can do all of that stuff, and I know you know what I'm talking about if you're still here listening to this, we can do things that are supposed to be relaxing. You can take that bath, you can go on a walk, you can get a massage or whatever. And although it could help like in the moment, it doesn't really achieve that desired goal of helping you feel restored on a core level. And again, that's because true relaxation is not achieved through circumstances or through behaviors. It is achieved through the mind. So think about it. I mean, you can be sitting in a hot tub. You can be forest bathing, like strolling through the magnificent redwoods, or whatever, and still be a total stress case because your mind is still going 1,000 miles a minute. You're thinking about all the ifs and the musts, and you will feel like a stress ball, even if nothing is happening at all, because it's very difficult for you to set boundaries internally. I mean, let's all raise our collective hands here. If you've ever been laying in bed in a darkened room with absolutely zero things happening, except for, that you're supposed to be laying there relaxing and falling asleep. And you have all of this imagery happening in your mind. You have thoughts and you have knots of anxiety and you're thinking about, this and that and blah, 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 because you just can't shut off your brain. And so that right there, I think, is a perfect example of the fallacy of relaxation. This idea that relaxation is achieved through particular things, right? Because the truth is, it does not matter what you're doing if you can't turn off your brain, or especially if you are indulging in patterns of thinking, specific patterns of thinking that are really like kind of terrorizing you from the inside out. Any efforts at relaxation will be futile. And so that's why today we're talking about how to relax through mind control, because that will actually help you create the kind of restorative relaxation experience that genuinely allows you to take a break mentally, emotionally, psychologically, creatively, and most importantly, will finally help your body start to relax physiologically so that it can unhook from your mind. And this is important. Physiologically, when we are in a state of arousal, so when you are physiologically aroused by something. So there's just a little bit of stress, fight or flight stuff going on. It actually creates changes inside of your physical body. Your heart is beating a little faster, your respiration is shallower, your circulation patterns change. It has an impact on your immunity, believe it or not, your body's ability to fight disease. The way you digest food can be activated by, or impacted rather, by all of this activation. And so it also, in addition to these physiological changes, it changes the way you cogitate. It changes the way you think. When your body is in even a little bit of a state of arousal, your brain will be in a state of like heightened awareness for threats and potential problems and danger. In the absence of anything threatening or actually dangerous happening in your environment, your mind will start casting out into the future, like into all its creative glory, starting to imagine possible scenarios of things going wrong, or even thinking about things in the past that went wrong, or possible threats, or, imagined scenarios that will that we will then kind of glom onto and be like, there it is, there's a threat, and start cogitating about that, and will in turn create an enhanced stress response in your body, because now you have something to worry about. So your heart starts beating faster and your breathing, constricts, and you have trouble sleeping. So it turns into this like really weird feedback loop. So that's kind of garden variety anxious response, right? In something like a panic attack, it is much more even dramatic. So somebody thinks, for example, I have a weird pain in my chest. Oh my God, am I having a heart attack? And then they start having this physiological stress response where their heart starts beating quickly, they start having trouble breathing, they feel a little bit shaky, and then it goes to, oh my God, I am actually dying. And then the stress response is exacerbated and they feel even more stressed out. And it turns into this like feedback loop where, people end up in the emergency room because of this, because it's such an intense mind-body experience that they cannot get out of it. So the struggle is very real. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because if you're predisposed to stress and kind of stressful types of thoughts, you're sort of simmering in this at a low level kind of all the time. And the result is not just damage to your health, but also the way that you think. It is very difficult to be creative. Being creative requires a high degree of safety because creativity is all about experimentation. And I wonder what would happen if I did this. Let's see. That requires a high degree of safety. Also, flexibility, being able to roll with the punches and be like, well, okay, that is also very hard to do when you're feeling vaguely threatened or under pressure, And so all of these things conspire to create sort of mini feedback loops, if it's difficult for you to be mentally flexible and you're becoming very attached to particular outcomes, which, often don't happen the way that we'd like them to in our world, because that's just reality based. I mean, things don't always go according to plan, but then it's very, very difficult to kind of have the inner resilience that allows you to bounce back from that and have the kind of mental flexibility and creativity to say oh, well, that's okay. Let's try this instead. Whereas if you are operating most of the time from a place of relaxation, you are much better able to think more clearly. Your brain just works a little bit faster. You're able to have all different types of alternatives and information at your disposal. You are also, and I think this is very interesting, able to focus and be more effective at whatever task you're doing. So, one of the things that we know is that, and this is from research, that when people are chronically stressed and overworked and, working 50, 60 hours a week, they are about as productive in terms of their output as someone who is really only working 25 to 30 hours a week, because the person who is working less shows up, they're present, they have energy, they're able to think more clearly, and they actually get a lot more done in a lot less time. And so, there are many, many benefits to being able to not just relax when you're getting stressed out, but really to maintain a general sense of relaxation most of the time. There are always ebbs and flows. There are times that you're going to feel more stressed than others. But if you're able to kind of come back into a state of general calmness, relaxation, where you're not always burning the candle at both ends or falling into these traps of worry and angst, you will be able to, most of the time, be more productive, be more creative, be more effective, be less emotionally volatile, be more even-keeled. When things do go wrong, it's less of a big deal. And also protect yourself from what is, I'm so pleased by this, becoming increasingly recognized as a capital P problem, which is burnout. So burnout is oftentimes a term used in workplace environments, and it is a syndrome that is now, I believe that there is a newish medical diagnosis that recognizes burnout as a collection of symptoms that has extremely negative and adverse consequences for people on many, many, many levels. And so burnout is the term to describe what happens when people are existing in a chronic state of stress and overwork for so long that they do not have sufficiently restorative periods of relaxation and, the physiological kind of relaxation where their bodies are able to kind of come back down to baseline, but also the mental relaxation that, those things, as we've discussed, go hand in hand. But so they are in a state of chronic stress and anxiety and overwork for such a long time that they actually lose the capacity to feel much at all. It's like they and there's actually evidence that it creates changes in your endocrine system where if you are repeatedly stressed, your body loses the ability to create that stress surge after a while. Another name for it is something called adrenal fatigue, where your body kind of stops creating enough of that. It's like you've blown your fuses, basically, where your body stops creating enough arousal to make you feel motivated to be able to get out of bed in the morning, to give you a sense of pleasure or satisfaction in the work that you're doing. And so people who are experiencing chronic burnout oftentimes feel absolutely discouraged and disgusted and in this state of despair. They don't want to go to work. They don't want to do things. They don't take pleasure in life. They often feel very kind of angry or irritable about things. They also really lose their capacity for empathy and compassion for other people because they themselves are suffering to such an extreme degree. They often will get sick or experience health problems. And as you can imagine, their relationships are enormously impacted. I once worked with a man who literally had a heart attack because he was in this space for such a long time. And as a result of his heart attack, I'm pleased to report he finally did take some well-deserved time off, got involved in coaching with a certain someone, and wound up making major and positive life changes as a result of that experience. He just went in a completely different direction. So, what we're talking about today is a new way of being that will help protect you from all of that. I'm going to give you some strategies that will help you be able to kind of feel okay most of the time and incorporate relaxation into your day-to-day experience like it was your job, so that you are making relaxation and stress management a priority, so that you're able to function at your highest and best. And just one little word of inspiration here as to where we're going. We've all pretty much gotten the memo that when we do certain things, it has health benefits, and it has benefits on the way our brains work and our bodies work. So, for example, exercise. We all know that we should exercise for a certain period of time in order to achieve all of these amazing health benefits and also emotional benefits and cognitive benefits. I recently came across an article that talked about if you exercise, like raise your heart rate for 20-30 minutes, there are measurable impacts on your memory of all things for days after. So, you can have a air quote dose of exercise on a Wednesday, and your brain is still working a little bit better on Friday or Saturday as a result of it. So, we know this. We also know that certain foods are much higher in nutrition. Plant-based foods, certain types of foods that are packed with vitamins and nutrients, that if we eat these kinds of foods, even if the caloric intake is the same as, the same amount of calories in a processed, chemical-laden food source, it impacts the way that your body functions to a significant degree in terms of its capacity to manage disease and, prevent adverse health impacts. And so the idea that I'm introducing to you today is that intentional relaxation is very much along the same lines, but it's one that is not discussed enough. So, we know that we need to eat well and exercise a little bit, most days out of the week in order to be okay. Cultivating relaxation is exactly the same. There are so many people, you might be one of them, who will find time in your 50-hour work week to eat a salad and take a walk because you know that you need to be doing these things. And relaxation, real relaxation skills, are not even a thought in your head because these things are really under-discussed in our society. So, again, that's why we're talking about this today. So I would like for you to take what I'm offering to you, the information that follows, in the same sense as, I need to exercise, I need to practice these things that Lisa is telling me about in order to take care of myself and in order for me to be living at my highest and best and most empowered way of being. Okay? And so, again, there is a little bit of a personality thing when it comes to this. There is a certain personality type that is a hard-driving, kind of higher stress personality type that needs to work at this a little bit harder. I am also one of them, right? There's a reason that people get master's degrees and doctorates and whatever. I'm being chased by wolves from the inside out, right? So, if you share that kind of high-achieving mindset, there is actually a personality type that was called, I think the original term was coined in the 1970s, a type A personality, all right? And this might be a more outdated reference at this point. So in case you are not familiar immediately with what that term means. So type A and type B personality actually came from cardiologists. so there was the story anyway. Who knows if this is an urban myth? I think it's a true story, but it's a great story anyway. So there was a cardiologist back in the day who noticed after a while of being in practice that he needed to have the upholstery replaced in his waiting room chairs. And this was happening much more frequently than in, maybe the offices of physician friends of other disciplines. Cardiologists were like, what the heck are these people doing to the armchairs in the waiting room compared to the dentist's office or the podiatrist's office? And so the upholsterer came to the office to say, well, okay, fine. And he looked at the chairs and noticed that the upholstery was being worn in a very specific and unusual way, which was they were wearing out the arms of the chairs. It was like they were kind of rubbing them and scratching them, and they were leaning on the edges of the seat, and they were getting up and down frequently. And so the cardiologists in question started to notice this, and it was actually turned into a research study. Friedman and Rosenman actually were a couple of researchers who came in and started exploring these differences. And the question was, what is different about cardiac patients, so people who are going to the doctor for heart problems, heart disease, high blood pressure, heart attacks, like that kind of thing. And what they found is that there was a different kind of personality cluster that went along with heart disease. And these people tended to be a little bit more competitive, a little bit more critical of themselves or others, striving towards goals, being very involved in their work compared to other parts of their lives, also tending to get kind of wound up easily, tending to react a little bit more strongly to certain things. But they also tended to feel like constant sense of urgency, like something needs to be done or something needs to happen. And it was also more difficult for them to relax. And this is this group of cardiac patients in relation to other people who were less likely to have cardiac problems. And that was called the type B personality, which was, comparatively a little bit more relaxed, a little more tolerant, more flexible, and had, generally speaking, lower levels of anxiety and higher levels of creativity as a result. So this is when I talk about a type A stress case. I'm not just sort of throwing around pop psychology terms. This is a real thing. And, I am also that type A personality. And I think we also need to acknowledge that this personality type also comes along with strengths and gifts, right? It's not all good or bad. But, type A people also tend to be very productive. They tend to get things done. They tend to be extremely conscientious and hardworking. They do tend to achieve significant goals. They're the ones starting businesses and going out and doing things, right? And so what I'm offering you is this idea that you can be super high achieving and conscientious and get things done and achieve your goals and all of that, while minimizing the negative impact to your health and well-being and relationships by being aware of specifically the way that you could think that will create more stress and anxiety and internal physiological negative arousal than it needs to. So, specifically, let's talk about thinking styles. We know from research, and I may have talked about this on the podcast before, but there are very specific thinking styles that have been shown by decades of research to have negative impacts on your mood, on your levels of stress, on your ability to relax and kind of calm down physiologically. This is the foundation of something called cognitive behavioral therapy. And by learning to identify when these particular types of thinking are happening inside of you, you can then take action to shift into other ways of thinking that will help you feel more relaxed, more calm, more in control. And again, this is so important because these ways of thinking are going to be happening inside of you if you do not intervene to change it. Whether you are sea kayaking among the dolphins or lounging around in a hot tub or whatever, you're still going to have these thoughts happening inside of you unless you are doing a manual override. So, one of the most pernicious and enduring kind of thought traits that type A people tend to have is that they tend to be fairly future thinking. They are not thinking about what is just happening right now. They are thinking about what should be happening, what needs to happen at 5 p.m., what needs to happen tomorrow. They are carrying around this list of things in their head that needs to get done and when it needs to get done. And they also tend to be fairly perfectionistic. Like, it doesn't just need to get done, it needs to get done the way that I think it should be done, which is possibly more elaborate, more comprehensive, more thorough than other people might approach the same task or whatever. Also, there is a tendency towards some all or nothing, black or white type of thinking where either this happens pretty much perfectly or there will be some kind of consequence. So there's either it's perfect or there will be some sort of imagined catastrophe. They think a lot about consequences, worst case scenarios, and also, this personality type, I think, goes hand in hand with high degrees of intelligence and creativity, even though ultimately creativity is impaired if you're not managing this. People who tend to have all or nothing ways of thinking, they do a lot of future thinking, it is because they have very powerful brains that are thinking about all kinds of scenarios. They're playing things out in their mind. They're also envisioning things very clearly in their mind's eye. So it's like mental movies of certain outcomes. They are seeing things unfold in their minds. And, while this can have benefits in terms of being able to solve problems or avoid possible consequences or, chart the best course of action through different things, what also happens is that people with this tendency, they spend so much time in their minds wrestling with problems, ruminating about different things, going into the future, going into the past. They are experiencing internally a lot of threat, a lot of agitation. They are experiencing the stress of potential problems coming to fruition. Even though that's not happening right now, they are experiencing it in the moment internally through their ability to envision things, and as a result are feeling stressed, they're feeling agitated, they're feeling irritable. Also, when people have sort of these perfectionistic black and white tendencies and this internal comes along with something, and I'm going to throw a psychological term out at you, okay? But the psychological term is a high internal locus of control, this belief that they are competent and capable of impacting the things that happen around them or in the future. And again, this is a very, very positive trait. People with a strong sense of control go into situations with believing that they can positively impact the outcome. They are action-oriented. They will try things. They believe in themselves. I mean, this is all good stuff. But also, people with a very high internal locus of control, they can sometimes overestimate the usefulness of their efforts at controlling outcomes and experiences, and sometimes other people. So they have this kind of controlling nature, which again is beneficial in some applications. I certainly do not want to take that away from you. But it's also important to keep your eye on it, because people who tend towards this kind of controlling, all or nothing, perfectionistic way of being, where they're thinking a lot about things and attempting to direct reality to kind of coincide with the way they think it should be, will often feel stressed out and unhappy when, not if people, but when reality does not go along with the way that you would like it to. I mean, I think it's fair to say that most of the time, or at least a significant portion of the time, we might not have as much control over the way things go as we think that we do. And most of the time, the things that you elaborately plan and the way you envision it going is not actually the way that it turns out. And so, one of the shifts that people with this orientation need to make is really kind of embracing a more flexible way of being that is able to kind of roll with the punches and shift back into a much more flexible, kind of tolerant mindset that is, as long as we're going in the general direction that I would like things to go, I'm going to release my attachment for a specific outcome, or, this idea that things should happen exactly the way that I would like them to happen. Because that mindset, again, while it does have advantages, it creates an enormous amount of stress inside of people, even when things are, for the most part, really going okay. And one other thing that tends to happen is that people with this mindset, and I think one of the core reasons why there is so much agitation and why it does go along with this perfectionistic kind of controlling mindset, is that people of this ilk tend to have a lot of beliefs about the way that things should be. They have very well-developed, core beliefs, which are also opinions, right? But opinions about the way that things should happen, what should happen, when it should happen, what they should be doing, what other people should be doing. They have kind of decided in advance what things should look like. And as a result, they often have a lot of internal rules about what should be going on and what should happen. And that, again, when other people aren't playing along by those internal rules, or when reality is refusing to conform to those rules, people will get upset. They will feel stressed out. They will feel angry. They will feel irritated. They will feel offended. They will feel personally affronted. They will again, have trouble sleeping and relaxing and enjoying themselves. They are sea kayaking through the icebergs, and if their kayaking partner is not, paddling with the correct form, they will get bent out of shape. Even though they're supposed to be having a relaxing experience, they're not, because they're kind of perseverating on these things that are going wrong. So this is why type A people have, cardiac problems, among other things, is because they're having these thinking patterns that are creating this physiological stress response where their heart is beating faster, their circulation isn't working as well, their immune system is doing weird things, and it's because they are having these internal threats over and over and over again. Also, same thinking style will contribute to people working 50 or 60 hours a week at a job and then coming home and feeling like they have to get on their hands and knees and be scrubbing their floor or getting upset because their house isn't as clean as they want it to be, and they are overscheduling their weekends and they have very high standards for everything. And it really contributes to a lot of suffering and stress. So, if through my discussion you've been having just a couple of moments of recognition, like, yeah, I kind of do that. So this is where we're going. Step one of being able to manage this and really relax from the inside out is about recognizing what is happening inside of you when it is happening. And of course, fully developing this ability is beyond the scope of what we can do in a podcast. I mean, when I'm working with people in therapy or life coaching, we are spending weeks, if not months, sometimes helping people identify what they are doing on the inside that is creating stress and anxiety and unhappiness inside of them. Because the problem is that it is so ingrained. It just feels like the way we are and the way things should be. Like it's where, we're simmering in our own broth, and there is very limited recognition of what we're even doing until someone starts pointing it out and being like, there it is, there it is. And so it's a lot of what we do in counseling and coaching is that first piece, which is helping people identify their blind spots and develop the level of self-awareness that is required to think about what they are thinking about in a more observational kind of way. So we do that in counseling and coaching. I spend, the first 5 sessions of my online happiness class teaching people those specific skills. So what I'm providing here is an overview. There are ways of cultivating this ability to be aware of how you're thinking. But I just wanted to give you an overview, and there are other options for you to continue to develop this ability if that's something that you think would be helpful to you. So, step 1 is understanding how you are thinking and noticing the impact that it has on you physiologically in terms of your stress, in terms of your mood, and then being able to very deliberately and intentionally shift into different ways of thinking that help you feel really ultimately safer on the inside. And I know that some of you might bristle at that. They're like, I'm safe. I'm in control. Nothing's going to happen to me because I am always thinking about things and always planning things. And I hear you. But if I'm going to assume that you're listening to this podcast because you haven't been feeling that great and you would like my help with helping this, feel better. So I'll just introduce this idea, play with it, let me know how it goes. But to cultivate an inner sense of safety, you need to replace vaguely threatening thoughts. And threatening thoughts are any version of this could happen, this should happen, this needs to happen, this is what's going to happen if this doesn't happen, this rule was violated and therefore, or I'm feeling bad about that, or this person isn't doing what they should be doing and I feel bad about that. So is replacing all of that with a different way of thinking, which really emphasizes safety and flexibility. And so there are also many, many, many ways of cultivating this skill. This is also a skill that is developed over time. You high control perfectionists out there might think that, me telling you this or reading a self-help book about it or something is going to give you the ability to be able to do this. And it's not. This is something that you really need to to practice for weeks, maybe months. I myself have been practicing it for years, and I'm still getting, to the place where I'm reliably, proficient at it. But it's stepping away from all of the rules and that sense of control and coming back into a very deliberate, flexible space where you are able to say to yourself, I have my preferences about the way things should go, and other people do too. Or I have my preferences, and I also am aware that I do not have magical powers to control reality. And lately, I've been experimenting with an idea that I really like, which is the fact that when I am not trying to control outcomes so carefully, the end result is often much better than one that I might have very intentionally designed. There's some kind of almost accidental outcome where I'm like, wow, I would never have even thought to create that. But now that it's here, this is even better than anything that I would have deliberately tried to do. So I guess it kind of comes back to the sense of trust and feeling safe that it is okay to have things develop as they will, as opposed to trying to control things micromanagey style. I think that that's a really good one. So that flexible piece. Also, I would like to introduce this idea that not doing anything and releasing this sort of ever-present sense of this needs to happen and this needs to happen and this, like that goal-directed behavior, and periodically giving yourself big periods of time where you are not trying to do anything. Nothing. Goal directed. You're just like, okay, what's next? Or wandering around, and deliberately, if your brain tries to go into, oh, this thing needs to happen, walking it back into, no, I am not doing anything right now. And the reason for this is that if you can keep your brain away from kind of like, gnawing on different problems or trying to do specific things, it will help, again, you relax physiologically, and it will restore this physiological sense of quiet and safety that ultimately becomes extremely fertile ground for innovation, creativity, and extremely productive behavior. I also read a research article not too long ago that the Dutch actually practice this kind of collectively, and there is a Dutch word for it. It's called niksen, and it really is the experience of just sitting in a chair and looking out a window and not having a thought in your head. And if that thought itself gives you a little bit of anxiety, you are exactly the kind of person who needs to be practicing this intentionally every once in a while. And again, there are long-term benefits to your health and well-being. Your levels of anxiety go down, your body works better, but most importantly, your brain works better too. And lastly, I'll leave you with a concept of the sabbatical. So for a long, long time, and you still see this in academia, is that, people who work as tenured college professors, they will go through periods where they are teaching classes and doing a lot of writing and handling many things, and really they're on it. And though one of the perks is to have periods of time where they are on sabbatical, and it is literally months, up to a year sometimes, where these academics And think about this. So people who are paid to think and come up with new ideas have discovered that going on sabbatical and taking time off to not be hitting it hard, to be reading things that they find interesting just because, that aren't because they have to take time and just wander around and think about stuff, or, but not with purpose. I mean, the idea of sabbatical is to not do things intentionally necessarily. They have discovered that by doing this, they are able ultimately to have inspiration, bursts of ideas that they would not have had if they were trying to create them. I mean, we have so many stories of people feeling like they're struck by lightning when they're just wandering around, kind of doing their thing, and they have this oh my gosh, eureka moment when they're not actually trying to force it. And so, really, developing relaxation skills means, first of all, embracing the new concept that this is very, very important to do and should be just as much of a priority as anything else in your life. And recognizing that everything that you do, including and especially work, but also your relationships, your health, will be better for it, that you actually will have a greater impact and be ultimately more successful in what you do if you take a step back as opposed to continue charging forward all the time. So that is step number 1. And then step number 2 is understanding what exactly is involved in real relaxation, which is not a physical experience as much as it is a mental experience, and being highly aware of what is happening inside of your head that is antithetical to actual relaxation, and look for the thought patterns. Anything that involves black or white, all or nothing thinking, or perfectionism, or a lot of future thinking, or this sense of control that you turns into this pressure around I need to, I have to, this must, going into a lot of rules and regulations for the way things should be. Be aware of all of those happening in your mind. And when you notice any of them, shift into a more flexible, tolerant mindset that helps you be at ease with whatever is happening. Attempt to use those present moment awareness skills, which I am not going into on this particular podcast because we'll be here for 3 hours if I do. You might want to check out some other podcasts on this topic, or you could always check out the happiness class if you'd like specific instruction on how to cultivate the kind of present moment awareness that will help you manage these thoughts and stay in a good place. And then when you are in more control of your thoughts, also then very deliberately seeking out opportunities to do nothing at all, not just physically, but on the inside too. And trust that if you begin to feel safe and at ease and comfortable with reality as it is, really interesting things can start to happen. But the paradox is that you cannot make them happen. You need to be cultivating an inner environment, cognitively and physically, that is just like a fertile ground for the really interesting things to happen. You cannot force it. So anyway, I will leave you with those ideas, and I hope that that helps, whether or not you are going on a vacation or if you are just struggling with burnout and really needing to feel more secure and nourished in your world as it is. I hope that these tips help you along that journey. All right, that is it for today. Let's listen to some more Hello Sunshine together, and I'll be back in touch soon.